So good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. Just a little bit of background about myself. So I've been a primary school teacher. I'm a catechist here in my local parish, which is about an hour from here at St Mary and St Modwyn's in Burton-on-Trent. And I've been I've just done some studying through Maryvale in the past. I'm currently completing I'm in my final year at last of the BD course, and starting to prepare dissertation plans, etc. And I've only been in this role since the 1st of September, so there's a way to go. But I have been volunteering to cover some of the lectures and courses probably over the last 6 to 9 months. So what I want to do today is just really go through some of the thoughts and ideas that I've got, and also get your input into whether you think some of those things might work or not, and encourage you to become part of the programs that we develop as well in the future. And when I was first invited to give a presentation, I had 2 thoughts. The first one was, do I want to be the first person after lunch? Will everybody still be awake? So congratulations, it looks like everybody's still managing that one, but I think there's still coffee at the background, if you need it. But secondly was, in the light of the Pope's recent apostolic letter, do we know what we need to know as catechists? What's he going to ask of us? What's the expectation? What's the training needs? What expertise are we likely to need? So my first thought was to look, as Father Jan said this morning, to look at the directory, the new directory, and a fairly lengthy paragraph, which is then also used in the apostolic letter. Just to pick a few things out of there, it says that catechists are called first to be experts in the pastoral service of transmitting the faith. So, and I kind of thought as a catechist myself in my local parish, do I consider myself expert? And I'd probably have to question that a little bit in certain areas. Also that there's the need for the ongoing formation. So it's an ongoing journey. We talk about our own faith journey, but actually also in terms of our ability to then pass that faith on to others. And I think that links very closely to what we talked about in terms of parents being able to pass on the faith. Do they feel expert enough? That every catechist must be a witness to the faith, a teacher, a mystagogue, a companion, a pedagogue who teaches for the church, and through prayer, study and participation in the life of the community they can grow. So I started looking down at each of these, asking myself, okay, how does this apply? How are we going to use this in terms of developing ourselves, and then also being able then to develop other catechists who are also going to go out and form others as disciples in Christ? To be a witness in faith, what does that mean? Does anybody consider themselves today to be a witness in faith? How do we define that? I had to think it through carefully. And to me, it wasn't about what we talked about earlier on in both presentations earlier. It's about accompaniment, being able to share faith with others, to know what my faith is, and to be able to pass it on. To be a teacher. And I think, again, that perhaps takes us back to parents who often take that step back and say, well, I'm not a teacher. So it's either school or it's the catechist in the church who's going to help my child, my teenager, etc., to take that step further in their faith. To be a mystagogue, which I shared with my teenagers today. Do they understand what a mystagogue is? And they came up with some interesting answers, but eventually we got to being able to share the doctrines of the church, and that links us back again to expertise. To be a companion. And accompanying somebody on a journey sounds quite nice for us, actually. I'd like to go on holiday and share my journey with someone. But this is a similar journey. This is a journey in life, a journey of faith, a journey of joy. To be a pedagogue. So we're not talking about those dull, pedantic lecturers in college or in university where this is it, this is exactly what you're going to use and this is the only way you're going to teach it. But actually to be broader, to understand that faith is broad and people's way of understanding and learning is different. And therefore we need to make sure that we share that. We understand that in our teaching. So what we're going to share as teaching to others, there needs to be a variety of ways that we do that and engage with it. We certainly think about it when we talk about children in school, learning in different ways, with different styles, through play, through activities. As we move through life, we tend to lose that, and then we end up with a classroom of people, often who are just sitting and waiting to be told. And I found that certainly with parents in my parish, where they will sit in the pews and just sit there waiting to be told what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what the children will be doing, and how quickly can they get home to have a cup of tea. Francis also clarifies in terms of that kind of next step for the catechist. They should receive suitable biblical, theological, pastoral and pedagogical formation to be competent communicators of the truth of the faith and have some prior experience of catechesis. In this respect, he's specifically referring to catechesis as a vocation and the new call of a ministry of catechesis. But this actually is much wider than that and covers all of us. So our responsibility as Catholics, as the baptised, is to share, to catechise within our families, within our friendship groups, our wider circles, in work, or in schools and colleges, wherever we may be. And that in itself can often be a challenge. Once I referred to the courses at Maryvale, and the course particularly in catechesis, and many of those that have studied it will know that it covers lots of those areas. But the majority of us work in parishes and school environments in terms of our delivery, if you like, of catechesis. For me, it's about relationships. So enabling individuals to form relationships and have those communication skills is really important. So going on a course of study, we've touched on Maryvale, a place of study, a place of academic rigour, certainly at the higher education level. But actually, it's great to have the theory. It's important to have the theory and the understanding of it. But we need to be practical. We need to know, how am I going to respond to a parent with a particular question? How do I deal with a young person that's decided that they really don't want to be there, that puts their feet up on the table and says, okay, show me this faith. What are you going to do about that? And that, for me, is where the centre needs to refocus some of the work that's been done at Maryvale. So there's been a lot of focus on the academics, which is fantastic, and that continues in our higher education programmes. What I would like to see is much more coming through from the parishes. So rather than we tell you what you need, here's a course, take it, and then there's a nice tick. Actually, you tell us what's missing, what are the gaps, how could we help you, both in your academic learning, the theory, but also in the practical side. So some of our courses already include practical applications, preparing sessions, going through the process of what should be in a session. But actually doing it is the bit that's missing. And actually that can be the hardest bit. The lady touched on this morning, if you don't have children of your own, sometimes it can be, how do I relate? How do I get started? And that's what I feel we should be teaching and sharing. But also getting feedback from others. If you've done it for a long time, fantastic. Come and tell us how you do it so that we can share all the good practice with others as well. How should we go about teaching the teacher? And I specifically chose this image, it's actually a group of young people, it's taken from a specific book, with a blurry teacher in the background. Sometimes we feel like that blurry teacher. What question's going to be asked? What's the answer going to be? Someone who sits at the front and says, this is how you do it, and off you go. It's perfect. Actually, getting that perfection is very difficult. And being seen as a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're catechising in your local parish, often is difficult. It's taking that leap of faith in terms of saying, actually, I do know, I do have the skills, and therefore it's okay, I am a teacher. Our iconic teacher is Jesus himself. He's the one that we all wish to be like in our teaching, in our knowledge, in our awareness. I'm not sure that Maryvale can bring you to that level. I think we have a way to go. And prayer and the devotion is going to help us as well, but in terms of learning practically, it can take some time to get used to that. So what we do is, hopefully, what I'm hoping we're going to do, is develop programs that support that, to support you as individuals. I think Maryvale's known for its distance learning courses, and there's often some confusion as to the difference between online and distance learning. So an online course, just as it says on the tin really, is only online. You'll receive your information or your booklets, etc. You complete them, read them, perhaps do an assessment, and then you send that in and it's marked, which is great. Works with lots of courses. I've done some myself. Certainly when I was teaching at school, some of the basic things, the extras that we need to learn about safeguarding, etc., can be done, at least started in that way. But I don't think it works for catechists. It doesn't work in terms of relating to each other. Forums such as this are essential to share experiences, share knowledge, and the same in terms of taking a course, a certificate, is that we need each other. You can't do it on your own. You can do the learning from the book, you can do the theory, but actually we need each other to share and to understand how we're thinking, how we think it might influence our delivery or our work with the children or young people. So at Maryvale, it's a kind of mixed approach. So yes, some of it's online. You get your workbooks, you get course books, but also it's about open learning. So you'll get opportunities to listen to lectures on various subjects. You get the chance to have group sessions that are a bit like this, but at the moment they're on Zoom. Over the last year, there's been lots of changes. I expect many people have got used to online activities, parish meetings. Our parish meetings have been via Zoom, and I'm sure many others have been in the same position, whether it's for work or whether it's for your church work. Becoming a teacher has many aspects, and we recognise that as well. I certainly do. In the past, I've done my formal teacher training, and that continues on a weekly basis, certainly on a termly basis. There's something else, Ofsted is always just behind, tapping on that door, something else new to learn. And the same applies to our faith journey. And again, we recognise that in terms of developing it, training courses. It's not, you do it, you take, and it's finished. Actually, we need to support you and mentor you on an ongoing basis. So it's a journey with us. That's what I hope it will be. I think many people may have studied with Maryvale in the past and have done their course and never heard from them again. For me, that's not what we should be doing. We are there to work together and to share things together. We've heard this morning about parents being the first teacher. Really, as a parent, and now as a foster parent, I understand how difficult it can be to be that first person sharing the faith. Certainly with my own children, there were challenges. Certainly as they got to be teenagers, there was but why? But why do I have to get up on Sunday morning and go to Mass? But why do we still say prayers in the morning? Why do I have to not just eat my lunch standing up in the kitchen, but sit down to family meals, particularly Friday was our no technology day, and getting 3 teenagers to put their mobile phones into the middle of the table and not touch them for a whole 45 minutes was a challenge in itself. It still is. I now have 3 teenagers and a baby in my house, and it can be busy. Life can take over. And being a teacher of the faith in my home, often it slips slightly. And every day I have to remind myself why. Why do I want to teach them? Why does it matter? And then explore that with them. And the teenagers certainly have a lot to say. And I find that I can use that as a reflection time, but also an opportunity to learn in terms of when I then take it into the parish and the teenagers that are dropped off on a Saturday morning and don't want to be there. They'd rather be with their friends, but Mum has said, you're going, off you go to your session, it's only an hour. Bring in our families together as part of that teaching role. And again, a big challenge, I think what Margaret said in the previous presentation is key, and something that I'll certainly be taking back myself. I'll run through this very quickly because I think it touches on both the two presentations we've already had, but there are formal and informal elements of becoming that teacher, of being a catechist. There's the formal structured elements, learning yourselves more about the Bible, about Holy Scripture and how you can apply it in your daily life, being able to lead a programme through that, often having a course that you've taken that helps you to have that structure can be a benefit. Greater knowledge of church doctrine, often that's kind of okay, if I get asked a certain question, I'm going to worry slightly about it. Again, a formal course can help with that. We include things like planning your sessions, doing presentation skills, all those extra reviewing as well. But also there's the informal element. Learning isn't just about books. I love books. I have a big library at home that I'm sure my husband would prefer I culled a few at least weekly, whereas I keep adding to it. But we need that balance between the two. Developing those relationships within the parish, with other members of the parish, getting others to come along and support us in what we're doing, but also with the children, young people, adults, in various different guises. We have to form different relationships, and everybody is, I think it was said earlier about, we would like everybody to be by the door ready to go, but actually some of them are there, some are possibly out in the car park, etc. We need to follow them and lead them through their journey wherever they start and wherever they're intending to get to. I remember having a group of 10 and 11-year-olds bouncing around the room ready to get started, and managed to quiet them down. Let's get started, let's prepare for prayer time, and we'll start with the Lord's Prayer. And one young man just kept going out the door, back in, out, and my friend that's with me said, I'll go and sort it out. And so let's all get started. We'll start with the Lord's Prayer. Everybody was ready and quiet. And she came back in with him and said, can we just stop? Because actually this young man had never been taught the Lord's Prayer at home. In church, he would just go, and hope that nobody noticed that he didn't actually know the prayer. And I started to think to myself, well, actually, I mustn't make assumptions. I just assumed that very basis was there because Mum and Dad dropped him off every week. So I had made an assumption. And we worked carefully with parents. The parish priest spent some time with them as well about that initial stage and being understanding of their position and where they were. The art of listening. For me, something that's often missed is that also, as well as talking as I'm doing now, I need to listen. So I need to listen to the children, but I also need to listen to the adults. So sometimes a parent may not have done the homework, and I find the same at with some of the students that are taking courses at Maryvale. I'll get a quick email that says, please can I have an extension, I haven't done the homework or I haven't caught up with the coursework. Actually, I always phone them or have a Zoom call with them, because then I can find out exactly why. Is it just been a busy month? Is it just that, they just haven't got round to it and they need a few more hours? Or is there more to it? Are they struggling with their understanding? Is there a bigger family issue or something that they really need someone to talk to about to enable them to take those steps forward? And the same will apply, I'm sure, to yourselves, where a young person turns up and says, well, I didn't fill in the book this week. That's it. Do we just say, okay, that's fine, do it next week? So you can have 2 lots of homework next week. And maybe the next week, now it's 3 weeks. Actually, we need to be forming that relationship, listening carefully, perhaps talking to a parent or whoever brings them and saying, is there anything else I can do? And within our courses, much of what we do is around helping us to be a bit better at listening, rather than just, we must hear what's being said or what perhaps somebody's body language or similar shows us. And the use of prayer. Central to all that we work through and what we explain and the guided work that we do is the use of prayer in preparing ourselves, preparing young people, and then completing, if you like, at the end of a session or at the end of a meeting, is to say, actually, we're now going to ask God to take us forward, to be able to use what we've learned and hopefully to help us in our understanding. So, often you're asked me to look at what can we do locally and what should we perhaps be doing centrally. And I looked at locally in terms of what you do in the parish, what I do in the parish, and the idea that actually at all times we're learning and at all times we're developing. So by being here today, we're learning, hopefully learning something, whether it's a short, brief conversation across the table amongst ourselves, or it's from one of the presenters. We're learning something new every day. We learn something new. And it's a challenge actually that I do set in our house, that each week we have on a Friday we sit together for dinner and we go around the table, and each of the young people in the home has to say what they've learnt that week, and it can't be something at school. It has to be something that's what we call life learning rather than school learning. And on occasions it can be a challenge for them to come up with something, but actually as over time we've all learned that what we need to do is focus on it and actually think about it during the week, and then we can share it on a Friday. So initially it was just, I learned how to, for one of our young people, it's a challenge to, he has learning difficulties, so it's a challenge to do a lot of things. So he would come and say, I caught the bus. That was it. So now it's about, okay, what did that involve for you that was new this week? So I paid for myself. Somebody else didn't pay for me. I asked for the driver for a ticket to a specific place. So each week he's learning something new. And the same applies in our journey of faith. Each week there'll be something new that we can all learn. At a local level, it tends to be that we learn from each other. Hopefully we've all got something that we can share, however small. It could be something big, but it could be small. And being able to come together with the priest, with others in your parish, with the young people that you perhaps work with, or in school in the same way, is our way of learning. So at a local level, it can be about that participation and sharing with others. Often it can be just about something where you volunteer somewhere near an Alpha course or something similar. But that's often about observation, working with others, maybe making the tea, which we're always grateful for. But actually often that's about observation, seeing what other people are doing, rather than doing it ourselves. And the role of the catechist, obviously, is to catechize, to go out and to do it, to share the word, not to simply observe what others do and how they do it. It's centrally, I think, that sort of training and development can occur. Maryvale Institute, in terms of this diocese, would hope that we can be seen as that central point for much of that. Not all of it, because there are different people with different expertise that we all want to come together, but it's not all Maryvale. But certainly in the Archbishop's, the plan for the diocese does identify us as the place for learning, the place for adult formation and development. But again, from my perspective, that should be about what what do the parishes want from us? What can we do to make your day much easier, your time much easier when you are out catechizing? So if you're sitting thinking, well, one of my challenges is this, if only I knew that, then please let me know or let the Institute know so that we can work on that with you and hopefully offer something that's of value. Training to teach needs to be guided, obviously, by the bishops, and certainly that's the expectation from the apostolic letter of the Pope that those that are, we anticipate a large number of people will want to take it forward in terms of their ministry of the catechist, but others of us may continue to catechize, but at a local level only. And the two must merge. We need to bring the two together. We need to focus particularly on matching training, development, with the needs of individuals. I've recently been approached around developing a course specifically for parents in a particular parish. Again, as we've already touched on today, sometimes there's a gap between parents' belief in themselves and their understanding of their role, and in terms of their knowledge as well. And often there's a separation between what the children do and what the parents do. So we have been approached to put a course together for a parish in terms of that, of bringing the two together. And those are the sorts of things we're quite happy to do, is to work with you, either as a bigger group, in the diocese, or as an individual parish, or as individuals, in terms of developing what's needed for your future. As well as direct delivery of courses and that, the other area that I would like us to develop is around resources. And I know that's something that forms part of the bigger plan for the diocese, but also within Maryvale is to say, actually, if we don't do it, we'll find somebody that does. And we can signpost you to other things and other people that can help you in whatever way you may need. So it's not just come and do a course, but actually, how can we help you in terms of becoming, if you like, a better catechist? So it may be training, but it may be something else. And we'll do what we can to signpost you and guide you in that way. Probably the main thing that we're working on at the moment that we've started on is a course which is called the Foundation in Parish Ministry. This is a short course, not a 2-year course. And it's come about through a number of parish priests coming to us and saying, people don't want to study for 2 years, or even if they do, they really haven't got the time, but they really need some core skills and some basic understanding, just forming that foundation, that first step, and therefore then they can take other steps forward as and when it fits with whatever their call is, whatever their vocation in catechetics may be. So at the moment we're developing that. It's only 6 months and it's 6 modules, so it's done 1 a month. It involves online lectures, so you don't need to travel. It involves one-to-one sessions with your tutors, where you can kind of go through what you're learning, how you're going to apply it, and also practical activities so that you can kind of say, yes, it works for me, or actually, no, this doesn't work for me, I'd like to try it a different way. And your lecturers will help you to do that. So it's not fixed. It's not a here's a course and this is what you'll follow. It needs to work and will work based on what people need for themselves. And every parish, every individual is obviously different. So hopefully we can develop it that way. We don't do essays. We do essays at higher education. I think that's what universities are for. And in the past, Maryvale has focused on writing 2,000-word essays. Even, I think that if any of you have taken courses before, you'll know that it's always been essay-based. So assessment was always through writing an essay. For me, I couldn't actually see a benefit to writing an essay on how might I deliver a programme to children. That's not going to help me to do it. So there are no essays anymore. They've gone. We do it based on workbooks and practical activities throughout the sessions. And your final assignment, if you like, is to actually present a session online to those others that are studying the same course as you. So to get that peer feedback, to share with others and say, this is what I would do, actually, how might somebody else do it slightly differently? How can I continue to improve and actually ensure that what I'm sharing is what I should be sharing? And I feel comfortable then being able to do that, depending on which context and which location you're in. The other thing that to me is very important is that any course, if you want to call it that, any training includes a spiritual element. Our faith is about that, about our spiritual development as well. And we can have training in a book, learn it, and off we go. But actually, we ourselves are also on a spiritual journey, the same as those that we're hoping to catechize. And we need that constant support, that mentoring, that guidance. And so we ensure that we have a number of priests and others that are willing and able to offer that spiritual support as well, alongside that, if you like, the practical learning and the academic learning that we do as well. For me, that's really important. And many of you may have been to Maryvale before and visited the chapels there. For me, probably when I first went to Maryvale, I went there as a student, and going into the chapel the first time was a very moving experience. We can't bring you that fully, but we aim to bring some elements of that. We have been lucky in the past to have the sisters who are unfortunately have moved, but we continue to develop that side and add that in as well, because both parts to me are important. We've also ensured that what we do fits with what the diocese are asking of all of you in terms of catechists and catechizing across your areas, your local areas. Working particularly with Bishop David Evans in the last few months, I've taken his guidance on what he thinks we should be doing and how we should be doing it, and also in terms of what knowledge he thinks that he believes that we should be sharing with each other, and how that should be delivered to everybody. Much more a local offering, shall we call it, where, as I said, it's about what people want rather than us telling you what you need. And our focus particularly, for me, has been on the real world. So developing materials and developing your assessments, etc., has to be focused on the real world, those questions that you may come across, those contexts that young people particularly find themselves in. It was mentioned after Margaret's presentation about the challenges of the internet and the areas such as that, and we include those things. We talk about those things because those are the challenges that will be presented to you, not necessarily on a weekly basis or daily basis, but they are there. Young people turn up to a session with their mobile phone. They don't want to put it down. They're much more interested. And obviously, we saw Father Young constantly checking his messages. But that's part of daily life now. We have to accept it, but we have to work out how can we manage that. How can we ensure that actually that doesn't detract a young person from their faith, or doesn't distract to the extent that they're no longer interested in their faith? And what the impact of that might be? How can their faith help them in avoiding some of the pitfalls, or in navigating some of the relationships or activities that they may find out there on the internet, or even face-to-face? So I think certainly the last year has shown us the challenges of that for young people. Certainly in our household, we've had some very big issues around contact being made with unknown people, and friendships, likes, all those sorts of things that perhaps mean less to us, or certainly to me, until the last year, than they would do to a young person, and helping them to understand how those things can be supported and how their faith can guide them through some of those issues is also part of what we like to include in our training. As I said, there's no need to travel at the moment. well, for the last year, we've redeveloped many of our courses to enable it to be delivered via Zoom, because nobody can come to the house. Gradually, it's looking like that might improve, and some of our training areas might actually be allowed to be reopened. But we have to wait on the diocese to agree to that. But at the moment, everything's on Zoom, and although many of you might find that you're perhaps zoomed out after a whole year of having to do everything that way. But we like to use technology. I certainly like to use technology as much as possible, but without destroying that personal relationship aspect as well. So it's very important that, if this was a class, a group, that you are able to communicate with each other and share time together, even if it is on Zoom. It's not quite the same. You have to make your own cups of tea and bring your own biscuits. But other than that, we try to encourage that sense of community, that sense of belonging and being part of something and all sharing in that together. So a centralised approach to learning, to both the formal side and the informal, and bringing it together, enables us to provide some of that service, and we hope that people will come to us as well and say, this is what we like to see, this is what we want, and we will do what we can, well I certainly will, to develop what's needed rather than what we think we should be asking for. So thank you very much. Thank you.
What does one do when the person giving the response isn't here? Thank you very much, Amanda. I was very encouraged by what you were talking about, and obviously things are moving forward and developing in what seems to me a good way. You'll have an opportunity now to talk about it for a little while and come back with further questions to Amanda about our proposals from your souls, about what, as she said, she would like to hear what you think. And I was, yesterday, I got back from the Peak District. It was only then that I found out that Father Paul was aged 54, and that I was celebrating 54 years of priesthood. Strange, isn't it? So, 24th of September 1967, Father Paul was born.
Oh, it's 23rd actually.
Oh, you were just a day before me. And 24th of September 1967, I became a priest. Anyway, so I was with a friend of mine in the Peaks doing a little bit of walking. And what do we talk about? Well, I think, Amanda, you know really, priests talk about their experience and what's happening. And of course, I was able to pick his brains because he's a thinking type of priest, a bit younger than me, so he's only 75 on whatever it is in January or February, and he retires from being a parish priest. His Westminster diocese. So we were talking about how things used to be, of course, number one. At the Gregorian, but we were both in Rome, the courses were all very academic. And so when I came back to the parish, I was giving a bit of that to people. Don't know what they thought was going on, but it was great to have the opportunity to be sent off on the communications course, because the bishop thought I might go into communications. But anyway, that's another thing. That didn't happen, but that's a long story. But I did go on a course preparing for going into communications at Gent, it was called, in London. There was a big centre there for communications. I was going to be an assistant there. But so when we were put through the training, of course, one of the things we had to do was prepare a talk. Well, the people who were doing this were in journalism and media, and they were saying to me, well, what's that all about? It doesn't touch anyone. It doesn't relate to their experience. So it was really a life-changing experience for me was actually relating what I was saying to what, as far as I could see, from talking to people, listening to people, was concerning them. So I was very pleased when I was in Dorridge and people would say to me on the way out of church, I'd like a copy of that sermon. True, Karen?
That's true, I see.
Won't ask too many people in case some say no. But it made all the difference to me. So really that has continued. I continue to read and be in touch with what I think is going on in the media and all that, and try to answer some of the questions people have. And I think that's really refreshing for me. Why do I share that with you? Because I think it also is refreshing for catechists to continue to look at the issues and to try and deal with what's going on. I must say that question there, but Amanda's raised it, and so did Margaret earlier, about the media and the use of Zoom and so on. Who could believe that I would be doing an online mass on Sunday evenings for people for the last 1.5 years? I'm just amazed at what I've done, really. But the number of priests who have, I mean, 1 or 2 have ended up with ears, on them and hats on and things. Have you ever seen any of those? We're doing their best, but they ended up with looking with a gollywog or something. Anyway, that's the wrong word to use. I should use it. It's amazing what can happen with technology. But most priests now have got online of some sort. We in the Deanery have Zoom, and Father Paul will be doing his talk shortly in the church, which will be via Mac, isn't it? I think you're
webcam.
webcam. I thought it was managed by somebody called Mac or whoever.
I was just going to talk.
So I don't know whether we're going to be able to record that as well for posterity. It would be nice. So I think, yes, we were talking about that sort of thing yesterday and how we were getting on with what we were doing and the challenges we were facing. So I'm delighted to hear Amanda talking about that being a possibility in some way, supporting you in doing that, because that's what we have to try to do today in very different circumstances. Father Jonathan is not here, so that gives you a chance for the slightly longer talk, I think, about what Amanda was saying and what sort of questions you'd like to have for her before we come to the time at 3 o'clock when we will be getting ready to go to the church where there'll be benediction and Father Paul will be giving his reflection on prayer and the life of the catechist. I have got one thing for you that I'm a bit worried that you won't do if I don't give it out, so I'll probably give it out now. Because if I leave it till after we've finished in church, you might not do it for feeling, you might rush off or something. So it's really about an evaluation of the day and your proposals for the future. So I'll give that out as you're talking now, before you come to the point of responding to Amanda in terms of her presentation, your thoughts about that and your questions. Okay? Thanks. And here, any comment or question for Amanda? And we start. Where should we start? Here at the front. I don't want to shock you. Have you got a question or comment on the input from Amanda? Do you want me to give you more time?
No.
She hasn't got a question yet. Should we start there?
Yes.
What about that group there?
Sorry.
Please, could I ask, when does the course start?
Sorry, could you?
Sorry, when does the course start, please?
When does the course start?
Okay.
Which one is that? Foundation, November. What about Catechist course? Is that starting?
Catechetics course starts at the end of October. The longer course, so the 2-year course starts in October. The short, the 6-month one starts in November.
But are you able to become a catechist during the
Yes. And advise the foundation. Yes.
Did you all catch that?
No, not really, sorry.
So the foundation, the 6 month short course, which just gives you that basic foundation in catechesis, it starts in November. The longer course, which is a 2-year course, starts at the end of October.
That's the certificate.
That's the certificate course.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. That's wonderful. I wondered if you had sort of an evaluation form for parishes to help them build a plan for what they're going to do and how they could interact with Maryvale.
We don't, but that's a really good idea. So
A plan for what did you say, Carol?
A plan to so the parish could look to assess their own needs and how they might be able to work with Maryvale.
In terms of this
Yeah.
Catechetical Directory,
Yeah.
Catechesis.
Yeah.
I'll use that. If you let me have your contact details,
Yeah.
and then we can share that.
That's a good idea, isn't it? It might be something you would like to share with the other parishes
Yes.
that are here today, because it will be easy enough for me to share whatever you give with because I haven't got everybody's contact details yet, but I could send it to each priest who has sent people today. That's a good question, I think. How are you getting on here at the front? Have you got your question yet, or comment?
Well, thank you very much for the talk. It's enlightening. The only thing I was thinking, if say you've been doing the work for some time, would it be worth having a refresher?
Yes, and part of the foundation, the 6 month one, is that we've had a few people come back and say, I just really want to just make sure I'm ticking, and I know, that everything that I deliver and everything that I say is still correct, because obviously things may have changed over time that I'm not quite sure about. So yeah, that's part of what the foundation is about. That's why I was saying it's hopefully addressed that everybody can have their own kind of part to it. So there'll be standard stuff that everybody will study, but those one-to-one sessions in particular will be about what do you need and where are you at.
May I ask a quick question? Are the course details and what's included in the course? Is that detailed online if you have a look?
It's on the Maryvale website. Yes.
The content?
Yes. All the
Yes.
details of
To
what's in
see
each
whether it's
section.
suitable for
Yeah.
what you... Okay, thank you.
May I ask one question myself? What Father Jan was talking about, the developments there, maybe Father Jan, you need to come in on that, but what you're talking about centrally, in terms of taking forward this Catechetical Directory and all the different elements of it, that's going to come out gradually.
I think very gradually.
Yeah.
Because at the front is probably easier.
Is there something you can share with Maryvale that they can?
I'm on the formation subgroup.
Oh, you're on
that anyway, so
Yeah, and I think
it's a way off, I think.
yeah, I think there are two strands really. There's the work that's being done in the diocese, and also nationally. I mean, you say the church moves in centuries, and I think we are really, because the audit went out just before the summer. We're collating the responses to that audit from the different dioceses, and when that happens, it will be discussed by the bishops when they're all together in plenary. And then from that, Bishop David and I will formulate a kind of a plan. But I think some of the things that will definitely be happening, that thing about accompaniment from baptism until sacrament of initiation, the completion of the sacrament of initiation, is certainly one thing. The second, I think, is a managed database of resources nationally, because we don't have that. And there are some things that Margaret and I have been talking about resources and how all of that is managed. So I think it's a slow process, but things are happening. But I think more importantly is what's happening on the formation subcommittee here in the diocese, which I do have a bit of input into as well. So I'll just stay here in case there are more questions.
Because you see, well, I work with ethnic communities, and of course they wouldn't consider themselves in the eparchies under the auspices of the diocese. But one of the things that the eparchies, as you know, if you take the Syro-Malabar, for example, they have their own bishop, and they're united with Rome and united with us, but they've actually got their own plans for catechetics. And I'm encouraging them to take note of things like skills for doing catechetics with young people, because they've got a very strong belief, and I have to say I agree with that. It's important that the people who hand on the faith actually believe it themselves. So they've got some very strong beliefs on things like that. I was hoping Father Jonathan would be, because actually they would question sometimes what happened in school. I'm a very strong school believer back then, but there are issues, you know, when you've got a lot of non-Catholic teachers and so on, and people not believing what we believe. So they're very strong on that side of it, that if you're going to do catechetics, you've got to be sharing the faith that you actually have. So I'm interested in that from that point of view as well, because I think some coordination across with the eparchies and the different ethnic communities would be good. It is mentioned in the directory, but not a lot yet. How are you getting on there in that group with Sheila in it? You don't have to speak for the group, Sheila, but just, you've got that lovely coloured mask, you know.
Remembering all the people who died for this country.
Sorry?
It's in, it was sold for people who died for this country last year, this month.
Lovely, lovely. Anyway, that group, anybody there? Any comment or question?
Yeah, I think we enjoyed it.
We enjoyed the talk. We felt it was inspiring.
You're all happy?
Yeah.
No questions? Are you just wanting to get to tea by any chance? Great. Any comments or questions here?
I just commented, having done the 2-year course, I'm glad you've got rid of this. Because it did disbar people in the parish who didn't see themselves as academic enough to do that kind of course. Whereas if there is a mixture of writing something and doing practical, I think it will encourage more people to come forward to do this.
So actually doing a portfolio type assignment.
Yes.
Can I add just one personal point, is that whether the diocese could come up with some kind of policy about financing and funding courses, because sometimes the parish pays, sometimes the person themselves has to pay. I think if the diocese wants to promote the training of catechists, then maybe we could develop some kind of policy in some way, you know, whether like a third the parish, a third the person, a third the diocese funds in some way, so that there's transparency, so that those who are interested know immediately what that cost is going to be. If it's £500 or £1,000, who's going to pay for that?
Yeah, I have a number of Scottish
So I just
students.
throw that in there.
Yeah, a lot of the Scottish students, that's exactly how it works.
What way does it work with the Scottish students?
So it's a third, and a third. So the
Just good to know that, isn't it?
individual parish.
So it could be suggested,
Yeah.
couldn't it? Yeah. Father Dominic would be interested in this, you see. Nice to see you, Father Dominic. Father Dominic is the Dean. If you don't know him, if you're not from St. Augustine, he's doing the benediction.
Comes at the right time to talk about money.
That's the pure and all.
They won't want anyone at the centre to know who's asked this question. Just because the diocese of money is a sore subject at the moment, you probably all know. Anyway, thanks, Father Paul, for that one. It was very helpful, I think. Is there anyone else who's got a point to make to Amanda or a question? which case, can I just say thank you very much to Martin, who has recorded everything and is going to make his way into church and make sure we get Father Paul for posterity as well. And what we're doing, Father Dominic, unfortunately, as you know, Father Rob isn't well, so Father Paul has stepped in to give the talk during benediction on the Catechist and prayer.